The world is a remarkable place, isn't it? We have all, no doubt, had experiences that burst our hearts open into love, that burst our hearts open into seeing the order and the harmony, into seeing the wisdom and the glory, into seeing how this universe loves us, supports us, and wants us to win, into seeing spirit and source everywhere in the, budding of a tulip, in the blooms on a tree, in the beauty of life. And when we see that, it's not hard to love life, is it? It's not hard to love love. It's not hard to love our spirit, our source. It's not hard. It's a remarkable thing. What about when it's not? What about when it's really hard to love it? What about when it's really hard to love? What about when we look out or look in and it is not a remarkable thing? Not remarkable at all. If you're on this planet, you have no doubt witnessed things that are far cries from remarkable. If you're on this planet, you have taken this dive into this adventure of life, and you no doubt have witnessed things that make your stomach turn, that make your heart break, and that make you wonder. That maybe even make you wonder how you could possibly have the resilience, how you could possibly move forward into love or experience love, or even entertain the possibility of looking at life as being a remarkable thing, or looking at a person or an individual or a circumstance as being a remarkable thing, right? In this human condition, we are present to sometimes some of the most grueling things to be present to. People that abuse other people, violate other people, violate their bodies, violate their spirits, violate their minds. We are present to manipulation and hatred. We are present to betrayal. We are present to these things that are so far from remarkable. How do we heal from that? How do we keep our wholeness? How do we have experiences of this human condition that are far from remarkable? How do we look upon it out there, and how do we be with it within here in a way that doesn't constrict us, retort us, contort us, and make us crumble and cry away, make us shut down, make us build blocks, make us put on lenses that are filters, that are cloudy, make us wear clothing that is stained and torn? How do we engage in a process of not walking into our world as a living injury when we're present to these things? The master teacher took a ride on Palm Sunday, a ride into Jerusalem, a ride where people were shouting and screaming, Hosanna in the highest, laying down palms, laying down cloaks, saying, oh, praise you, I see this remarkable thing. It's so remarkable, it's so magnificent, it's so beautiful. Look at this love, look at this healing. This is a master teacher that walked the walk of healing, of unifying, of restoring wholeness, of presencing the beloved within everyone that was met, of seeing everyone as whole and complete and unified with Source. And this is the week, no doubt, right, of celebration, the week of going, it's remarkable. It's remarkable. And then what happens at the end of the week? Where are we by Friday? This story is not confined to a textbook. It's not confined to a religion. It's not confined to a people or a place. This story comes to us because it is a living story of our hero's journey. Because it is a story that if we dive into it, it has the prescription for showing us how to walk through every possible earthly betrayal, every possible earthly violation, how to walk through it, and in the midst of it, maintain our connection to our source. Come not from reaction, but from spirit, from our intention, from our creation, from our power. How to walk through it with eyes of compassion and love and eyes that restore. Even in the midst of saying, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they've done. What does that say? That demonstration says, even in the midst of this, I will not be a part of creating more error thinking. I will not be a part of creating a lack of wholeness. I will not be a part of promoting, producing, or even being present to the possibilities that tear us apart and tear us down. Now, I think reading scripture is something that is a mystical process. You know, a lot of people have thrown it out because of all of the craziness, if you take it literally, all of the craziness that if you take it to manipulate, all of the craziness that comes from saying, I got this, you don't, this is what it means. That's not what it's about. That's not what it's about to me. That's not what it's about in unity. It is about a story, an archetype, a presence, a living vibrational field that supports us moving through the energies that we see in the human condition, from the human condition to the spiritual condition. And as we raise our vibration and our foundation and our view to that point. But that can only be done for us. It can only be done by us, and it can only be done through us. So if you feel so inclined, I invite you to take that story and to look at that story and look at whatever is going on in your life and to look at the moments in that story and to say, what is this teaching? What was done at that moment? And how have I felt that moment in my life? How have I felt being celebrated and then being betrayed? How have I felt it when people haven't understood me and people did what people do and I became injured? How have I presenced it when violations have happened to either self or other? How have I been with that? And what did the master teacher do on these steps of the journey, on these steps of the walk? What were the principles? What were the ideas? What was the foundation? No one can tell us how to heal. No one can tell us how to forgive. But forgiveness is part of life, is it not? Now, we could sit here and call injury wrong. We could call the perceptions wrong of the human condition. Or we could believe in the possibility that just like the environment knows how to circulate oxygen and carbon dioxide, knows how to clean the air, just how a tree knows how to clean the air, just how all life does this, just how our bodies know how to clean our blood, just how the ocean knows how to circulate itself, right, and purify, so do we. So are our beings born with a purification system in them. A purification system in them. Because on some level, we know this is going to happen. On some level, we know this is part of the journey. And so we're not built to not have the tools for this part of the journey. We're built to have the tools. And that's why forgiveness is a practice. Forgiveness is a way of life. And if you don't have anything that comes to mind in your heart or your mind for forgiving, if you hear these words and they come to you and go, I hear that, but I'm a clean slate. Trying to scan the areas in my life, relationship, my own spiritual practice, my journey, my health and wellness, my abundance, my financial prosperity. Trying to circulate and look through all these areas, I can't find a place where there's any forgiveness work. If that is the case, consider yourself invited. Consider yourself invited to engage in the forgiveness practice on behalf of your brothers and sisters and on behalf of our planet, on behalf of our animals, on behalf of everything in existence. If you have leftover energy even, because your forgiveness work, it's like, okay, yeah, I got a little there, but not a lot. Consider yourself invited to be the nervous system that will help transmute the injury that has happened in the human condition into healing and into power and into love. Consider yourself invited to pray and to forgive on behalf of all the children that have been violated, on behalf of all the women that have been violated, on behalf of all the men that have been caged in, on behalf of all the people that are living in a state of turmoil and suffering. Consider yourself invited. In fact, consider yourself a mystic on the planet that is meant to be using its energy, using that leftover, using that excess to bless others. To bless others. Because sometimes, is it not true that injury can be so intense and suffering can be so intense, our very own psyche will protect us from it. Our very own psyche will segment it out and say, it's okay, I know you can't deal with all of this there. I'm going to take that memory, or I'm going to take that feeling, or I'm going to shut off that part of your body, or I'm going to shut up that part of yourself. I'm going to close you off and close you up because, sweet beloved one, this is all that you can be present to right now. Are we willing to do that work on behalf of each other? Are we willing to do that work on behalf of the world? Are we willing to do that work on behalf of the Christ? The Christ is that consciousness that has nothing to do with Christianity. That Christ is the consciousness of the human awakened being. That is a soul being, a spirit being, that is lifted up beyond form, beyond time, beyond space. It is the birthright of every being on the planet. It is what and whose we are. It is the christening. It is the anointed one. In any moment, someone doesn't feel like the anointed one. Any moment, someone doesn't feel like the anointed one. There has been a violation of the full self, the whole self, the magnificent self. And there is an invitation to move into alignment with that experience of oneness, that experience that I am the Father, I am the source, I am the mother, I am the light, I am the love, whatever you want to call it, I and that are one. And I'm here as a clear vessel of that oneness. We're engaging, as we're on this planet, in living lives of spiritual abundance. That's what we're here for. That's our divine birthright. What does forgiveness have to do with spiritual abundance? What does forgiveness have to do with spiritual abundance? Why is the idea of forgiveness in every single tradition, in every single practice, in every single abundance course or prosperity course, why is forgiveness a part of that? What could that possibly have to do with abundance? When we hold resentments, when we're tied to our suffering, when we're not free to be our light bodies, our light beings, and our light selves, there is a constriction and a restriction in our soul, of our soul's expression, of our light. When that happens, there can be good things all around us, right in our faces, screaming at us, in fact, inviting us in, but we can't see them. There can be so much given, handed to us, in fact, handed to us right in our hands and roll right out. Because we're holding on to the pain, knowingly or unknowingly, willingly or not willingly, consciously or unconsciously. But when we're holding on to the pain, or when we're twisted, when we're stuck, when we're shut down, we limit our own ability to experience God as love, to experience other as love, to experience this world and this place as a safe space. So there are some illusions about forgiveness work that are pretty common. One of the illusions is that forgiveness work is about everything outside of us. It's about releasing the other people from their responsibility. It's about letting you go, letting that situation go. It's about saying, here's the big illusion, saying it's okay. It's okay that happened. I forgive you. I let it go. I let you go. Be on to your glorious life. Well, that would be looking at the world of effect, wouldn't it not? That would be looking at the world of effect, looking at something outside of me. Spiritual work is never about fixing or changing something outside of me. Now, that may very well be an effect. An effect of our forgiveness practice within may very well be unhooking other people from the responsibility. It may also very well, if you think of forgiveness work, you think of this bind. If I have an injury, if I have an issue, if there is something in anger in any way, it could be love, but here we're talking about those resentments. If there is something, imagine it as a hook. Imagine it as a big hook coming from me to you, either to that world circumstance, you fill in the blank, whatever it is, there is a hook. And on that hook, it is a wire. And on that wire, it is a transport system. It is like a fiber optic line. And energy and information and experience go beyond, go between, right? And all I'm doing when I unhook that is I am taking it out of me and I am sending it back. I am saying, I will be with what is mine and you be with what is yours. That may look like healing, forgiveness, and the way we love to think of it is like, oh, I could be so big. I'm going to be like the master teacher and go, oh, sweet ones, he just stuck a knife in my side. It's, beloved, love you, beloved. Maybe we don't have that consciousness yet. Maybe in a moment of injury, we're not there yet. But are we in a place where we can unhook those binds and let them go back to where they may? So that energy no longer has to be processed in me and through me, but I, in fact, transmute it. I, in fact, send it back to the source from which it came. But I do that by going within. I do that by doing my work. So the idea that forgiveness work is to change someone else or to condone that which is far from remarkable is only the ego's way of saying, don't do it. It's the ego's way of saying, don't do it. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. They haven't earned it. They're not worthy of it. But who does deserve it? Who does deserve it? We do. And we is every single person at the moment of awareness that they have a divine inheritance sitting there, waiting for them to be available to it. Every person. No matter if they are a perpetrator or a victim, in the eyes of the human being experiencing, no matter how bad the story of what you've done or what was done to you, there is a way and a space and a place in consciousness to be that says, I am simply willing to be in forgiveness, to practice this of myself, in myself, forgive myself, and forgive anything in the world around me. Forgiveness is about taking that first step of letting go of resentment and saying, what happened, happened, but I'm not going to continue to resent it, to resend it. I'm not going to resend it into circulation, resend it into my mind, resend it into my emotion body, resend it into my field, resend it into the universe, resend it into the world, resend it into another person, resend it into my children, resend it into anyone or anything. I'm not going to resend, not by might, not by power, but by thy spirit, I am willing. By thy spirit, I am willing. And I am willing, even if I don't have the answers, even if I don't know how, even if I can't even imagine that I could possibly have the resilience of spirit, I am willing to tap into the self that is beyond self, the self that is beyond form, the self that is beyond this one lifetime that I call myself me, that has probably experienced being the perpetrator and being violated to degrees that I can't even intuit or imagine, that there is a stronger self in me that knows this is part of the human condition. that knows that nothing can be taken. Nothing can be taken, and that there is a space where no injury could actually even occur. That there is a self to which no injury could ever occur. And I call forth that self with all of my power, with all of my vitality, with all of my clarity. I call that forth. I call it forth on behalf of myself, on behalf of everyone else, and the vibrational field that makes the space for this. Are we willing to step into the practice? William Halsey said, all problems become smaller if you don't dodge them, but confront them. All problems become smaller if you don't dodge them, but confront them. But there's a little piece for the human condition, isn't there? There's a little piece for the human condition. The human condition can tend to think that this may mean that I need to put myself back into a situation. Again, not forgiveness. It's not about that. It doesn't mean about putting yourself into a position again that you become vulnerable. It's not about that. It doesn't mean having to sit in the midst of something or make a space for it to happen again. In fact, it's quite important, is it not? Not to do metaphysical malpractice and say, how did I cause this? Not to do that. But if there are any ways that I have made myself vulnerable, it is important, isn't it? To look at that. To say, how will I not be a part of recreating that? So if that's a child, that means protecting your child with aware parenting, no? When you know that there are violations that have happened, putting in a system that's safe. When that's about the self or being in situations, there are things to look at that remind this human self, I am caring for you. I am stewarding you. But that is not getting into delusions of feeling unsafe on this planet or making assumptions, putting on a lens that tells me because of this injury, this is how I see the world. Throw away those glasses. Because there is a spirit and a source that binds us, that is infused in the very fabric of our being, that is pure wisdom, guiding us. We all know that coming onto this planet is coming into an interesting space. We all know that in every moment, and in fact, that's one of the beauties of this teaching of the master teacher, is walking through this and walking through it with non-resistance and walking through it with all of this energy of injury being thrown at you and going, that too cannot stop my walk. That too cannot take my body. That too cannot take my form. That too cannot take my light. In fact, only being able to call forth the truth and demonstrate my power will magnify that light, will multiply that light, will cause that light. So what are some practical steps? What are some practical steps for engaging this practice, even when it feels too huge to look at? We all have things in our lives or that we presence in the world that we can hardly stomach being present to, that we can hardly talk about or look at or see. Are we willing to transmute those energies? Whatever side of experiences we're on, are we willing to transmute those energies? The first step in transmuting them is always confronting. It's always being in a state of non-resistance and willingness to practice the spiritual principles. Edwin Gaines, in her book, The Four Spiritual Laws, she says this: It is completely normal to feel resistance when you start to do forgiveness work, especially when someone has done something truly terrible that has disastrous effects throughout your life. Looking back on what that person did, you might be inclined to say, I have a right to my anger. Bad things have happened because of this person. And a case could be made for that position. Perhaps you do have the right to your anger. You also have the right to take a screwdriver, she says, and stick it into an electrical outlet. But whom would you hurt by doing so? But whom would you hurt by doing so? Keep in mind, she says, we don't practice forgiveness for the benefit of the other guy. We do it for ourselves. If everyone on earth were to practice forgiveness as a daily discipline, life on this planet would be completely transformed. And that planetary transformation can start today with you and me. Are we willing to be with what is? Not to retreat, not to avoid, not to constrict, not to put on lenses and filters and put ourselves into boxes, not to keep secrets, not to disassociate. Resistance causes all sorts of issues, does it not? Look at what happened when the Catholic Church didn't want to see what was in front of them, right? What happens when we're so averse to seeing it? When we're so averse to seeing it, ironically, we say it takes a village to raise a child. We say it takes a village to do all of these great things. It takes a village to destroy too, does it not? It takes a village to keep secrets. It takes a village to create conditions that don't honor people, conditions that bully, conditions that harm. When we're not willing to look at things, when we're not willing to look at it because we can't stomach it, when we're not willing to take steps, to tell the story, to face it, we preserve it and we protect it. We enter into somewhat of a bond with it. But when we instead take our power and our strength and our vulnerability and we move through it, we transmute it. Problems become smaller when we confront them. The second step, in practical terms, even though this is metaphysical, and it can be hard for the ego mind and the human condition to see how this could possibly create healing or resolution, is to remove your energy from the effects and place them on the cause. Remove your energy from the whole world of effects into the realm of cause. Completely disconnect your energy from the effects and move to cause. John Randolph Price says it like this. He talks about our opportunity, that each of us have an opportunity to demonstrate the truth of our birthright. He says, stop giving any power to the effect. Stop giving any power to the effect. You're going to cease feeding it with negative energy. You're going to withdraw your energy from the outer scene and let it die. You're going to withdraw your energy from the outer scene and let it die. That's like unhooking the links. Let it fade back into the nothingness from which it came. Take a stand. Take a stand. Henry Ford said, don't find fault, find a remedy. Don't find fault, find a remedy. That's the same thing. It's easy to find fault, isn't it? It's easy to identify the patterns of destruction. It's easy to identify what's wrong outside. But we take back our power when we shift from the realm of the effects and trying to manipulate the world of the effects to becoming the cause, to instead generating energy, instead finding a solution, finding resolve, instead finding a remedy. Bring your energy back to yourself. And the last is to be your best advocate. There's something that happens when people are injured, and it's a little pattern of the human condition. And it's a tendency, and it doesn't happen at all times and with all people, but watch for it. There's a tendency when an injury happens seemingly to someone or obviously to someone, for that person then to abandon themselves. From that person then to inflict injury on themselves. For that person then to internalize through self-talk and self-treatment the same mistreatment or other mistreatment, the same abandonment. So are we willing to not abandon ourselves in our time of need? Are we willing to be our own advocate, to midwife ourselves through the healing process, through the forgiveness process? Are we willing to be our own friend? Not just once, but for as long as it takes. For as long as it takes. 70 times 7. As long as it takes. I won't give up on you. As long as it takes, I will presence you. As long as it takes, I will stop and pause and go back to compassion and say, what would compassion do? What would love do? How do I take one breath of compassion for myself? Are we willing not to give up on ourselves, to refuse to recreate any injury, and instead to call forth the Christ, to call forth the true I am nature, to call forth the one that is within us, and become a part of our own creation? That is the practice of forgiveness. Namaste.